Hi, this is the Margo Show. My name is Pia Coronel, your host for tonight. I am with artist Nikolina Kovalenko here with me tonight. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you.
I guess my first question for you that I'd like to know is what do you like most about your job as a full-time artist, painter?
Well, I feel like art is something that gives me strength. It gives my life meaning and purpose. I feel like this is something what's essentially my core and something that nobody can take away from me.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your beginnings? How did you get started with painting?
Well, both of my parents and my grandfather were artists, so I guess this is always how I envisioned myself, and now I definitely cannot imagine myself doing anything else.
What were the styles like? Were they similar to how your paintings are?
No, actually, I would say our styles are quite different. So my grandfather, he is a painter, and I would say his style could be described as Soviet realism. So bold brushstroke, a little bit more subdued colors, and very even hyper-realistic.
Mm-hmm.
My father inherited his love for representational style, but his art was a little bit more like modern, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom, she's an illustrator for kids' books,
Mm-hmm.
so she does mostly watercolor on paper, so very magical images, what makes kids smile. She creates this unique world for every child in the world.
That sounds amazing. And then were they full-time artists?
Yes, all three of them were.
That is fantastic. So how would you, and I know that you received your degree, your painting degree in Russia. How would you say is would you say is the difference between the art education in Russia versus the one in the US?
Well, Russian art education is definitely very rigorous, and it's mostly focused on representational art.
Mm-hmm.
And our days were very long. For example, just a normal day at school would be like drawing nude model from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30, then a short break, then painting a portrait, then maybe 2 hours of art history, and then drawing quick sketches for nude models.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I would say that maybe I would like a little bit, if it went a little bit further than end of 20th century, discussing more contemporary art. But I'm very grateful to my teachers for how much they taught me about drawing, paintings, and all the skills I have which helped me express my ideas in visual art.
So you would say the technique that you learned were more traditional?
Yes, definitely. I mean, Russian art education is still very traditional. So when I was an exchange student in Universität der Künste in Berlin, and then I came here to New York, and for me it was a little bit of a cultural shock how different approach to art was here as opposite of back home.
Mm-hmm.
So first year when I was here, I was going to every single art opening I could find in art cards, just trying to learn the aesthetics and what it's all about, and observe all these different styles.
Mm-hmm.
I was never exposed to before.
And did you ever have a chance to take a class, continuing education of any sort here in the States?
Yes, I was actually very happy to be a part of Artist Summer Institute,
Mm-hmm.
provided by Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. I really enjoyed the program. It was a professional development program talking about not just how to be an artist in this vacuum space, this perfect world, but how to run a business being an artist. So they talk about all the stuff, how to write an artist statement, how to approach a gallery owner, or what to talk about and what not to mention when you have a visit of a curator in your studio, or even how to do your taxes being an artist. So I found that very helpful, especially as it was just at the beginning of my career here.
Mm. And did you find it easy to adjust when you first moved to the States from Russia, in terms of finding your artist communities?
I would say I always, ever since I moved to New York, I felt like this is the right place for me. I felt like this city gives me energy, so it always felt right. If it was difficult at the beginning, of course, I think for every immigrant it's difficult to adjust to a new culture and to feel included, but if anywhere that's in New York, it's the mecca of the art world. That's why I really wanted to make it here.
Right. And I know that you're also very much well-traveled. Do you find inspirations through these like journeys that you go through? And I want to just see if you could describe your artistic approach.
So I normally find inspiration in a visual reference, so it always comes from something I see. As you mentioned, I traveled to tropical places a lot. I would say I'm mostly inspired by tropical flora. So let's say I travel somewhere in the jungle, and I love taking long hikes, maybe for the whole day, just being one by one with nature, hiking, meditating, listening to every sounds of trees, birds, and I get in a certain mood, and I sketch some textures and plants and the landscapes which inspire me, and then I also take a picture to use some details for it later when I'm rendering my paintings back in the studio. And then the next step is when I come back to my studio in Brooklyn. It takes me several weeks to just digest all this information, to translate it into my visual language, and then slowly the series of paintings starts coming together, just like pieces of a puzzle. And I normally work in series, so I rarely think of just one painting. I normally create a body of work based on certain experience.
So, and what it's like to adjust from the rainforest to the hustle and bustle of New York City?
Well, of course, first couple of days you're here, you think, oh God, why did I even come back? It was so great there. But then, honestly, I always have this struggle between whenever I want to live somewhere in the nature and constantly be surrounded by this amazing environment which inspires me and nourishes my artistic imagination, but also I don't think I would be able to live in cultural isolation. So I love everything New York has to offer, all the gallery shows, all the theater plays, concerts, and it's also nice to learn from other artists, to exchange ideas. I wouldn't be, so to speak, I wouldn't want to be boiling in my own juice, just getting inspiration from what I do. I think healthy competition is good for your artistic development.
Right, and it is in some ways also an inspiration, right? Like living in New York City, quite a difference from the Amazon and nature. How would you say what would you say is the biggest difference in terms of the types of inspiration that you get from these two different places?
Well, I think in New York you mostly focus on the outside, and when you in the nature, you focus lays within you.
That's really interesting. So when you're in nature, it's more inside, and then when you're in the city, it's more very external stimulation.
That's correct, but I feel like being an introvert, for me, having some time by myself is essential for refilling energy.
Actually, we're just showing these really amazing, beautiful scarves that you've actually started doing. We're gonna get back into the the really big project that I want to talk about with you. But could you just tell me a little bit about these transferred paintings onto silk scarves, like that project?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So for me, this silk was a natural material to show vulnerability of nature, and I also like the idea of art being approachable and integrated in our everyday life. So here it comes, wearable painting. So the scarves are based on my Rainforest Dreams series.
Okay, I think that we're going to take a break for now. We'll be right back. Hello, this is the Margo Show. I am Pia Coronel, your host for the evening. I am with artist Nikolina Kovalenko here.
Hello.
We were just talking about going back to Nika's inspirations. I know that she just came back from the Amazon. Could you tell us a little bit about, actually, could you tell us a lot about this? Because I know that this was just an amazing travels from you. Could you tell us a little bit about the day-to-day that you experienced there, why you went there in the first place? Tell us about the project that you're working on regarding this trip.
So I went there to work on my project. I developed, it's called Saving Trees Through Art. So it's my environmental project dedicated to the Amazon rainforest. To me, when you look at a stump left after extermination of a tree, it resembles a fingerprint when you look at it from above, right? And I went to logging sites in Brazilian Amazon, and I took the fingerprints of the trees, of the logged trees. So by placing a thin piece of paper on the stump, I was rubbing it with a pencil and getting all the unique textures, like all the age rings and other marks left from the tree's life experience. And then the second half of the project was interviewing environmental activists. So by that I mean volunteers planting trees, professors teaching forest engineering, scientists who work on genetics of local Amazon plants to ensure the healthy growth of the secondary forest. Secondary is replanted, so basically if a forest was cut down before and it's growing back, that secondary forest is opposite of primary, which was intact. So the idea of the project is that I paired every cut down tree with a fingerprint of a volunteer planting new tree. So like yin and yang of a world recreation, striving to balance out destruction. And upon returning to my studio, I'm working, actually it's still in progress, so I'm working on this diptychs, which you will see in a minute. They literally look like yin and yang, and you can't quite tell almost which one is a fingerprint and which one is a stamp. And the idea is that I will have a show, a gallery show, and parts of the profits will be donated back to the communities in the Amazon for funding more reforestation. So yes,
Wow,
so this is the
that is
wrapping
amazing.
of the drawings, and I mounted them on the Amazonite boards to give them a little bit more
Wow.
stability. So yeah, those are the final images.
So how did you come to this concept? Like what triggered this, or what started this idea?
I cannot quite remember how it all started. All I know is last winter I was I'm getting more and more involved into the environmental activities, so this like volunteering, and especially with everything was going on in the world, this is a very pending topic, and I really want to make a difference. So I was looking for a way from the artistic point of view, how can I help? And of course we can talk about climate change and deforestation, but it feels sometimes words just don't get to us. It takes a visual image to finally understand. For example, did you know that in the time we have just talked about our project, the piece of a rainforest just in the Amazon, larger than 48 football fields, was destroyed. So that's the speed it's going on. And a lot of environmental organizations are working on stopping this, but of course we need all the help we can get.
And I know that you also ran a Kickstarter campaign to actually fund this project.
Yes, that's correct. I am very grateful for all of my friends and art collectors and just art lovers and people who I never met, which was so amazing how they fell in love with this project and they believed in it, and it wouldn't happen if not for them.
And it's really amazing too, because that shows, that people care about the environment, right?
Yes,
like
they do.
Projects that actually really benefit our environment. It's very important for people.
As we say, we are not inheriting Earth from our parents. We are borrowing it from our children.
Right. Could you tell us more about the day-to-day during this trip that you had in the Amazon?
Don't even get me started. It definitely wasn't easy. I mean, you can't just get off a plane in Manaus, which is the capital of Amazon, without knowing anybody and ask, oh, can you please bring me to the logging sites, because this is not safe, there is a lot of illegal activities around it, and even police tries not to investigate too much. So I needed to find a way to find an insider. And I started by going to, taking a tour, just like every tourist does when they go there. Taking a jungle tour, spotting sloths, fishing for piranhas, etc., living in a jungle lodge. And I took it from a very responsible organization doing a lot of environmental work and helping local communities. So I volunteered at local school. We did some painting with kids, and upon my return to Manaus, I asked the owner if I told him about my project, and I asked the owner if he could help me in any way. Maybe he could help me to give me a guide, or maybe suggest how I can hire a driver who can help me to drive around looking for logging sites, because they're not exactly on the map. I wouldn't even know where to look. I knew the region more or less, but it's not safe. That is not to mention that I don't drive. And he said, actually one of my friends, he works in a logging company. And here I was going on a bus for 10 hours in the state of Roraima, which is the very north part of Brazil, almost on the border with Venezuela.
Wow.
And I was staying with this really nice family in a village where I've never seen a tourist before. And the guy brought me to the logging site where he worked. And even though I came as an insider, other people, other workers were definitely not excited about me being there, but it was fine. This friend of mine was very helpful, and I took all the rubbings and drawings I needed. It was really just luck. When I was there for 3 weeks, I even wasn't sure if this project can be completed. And much more difficult was actually interviewing the environmental NGOs and volunteers, because there are so many people who mean to do good work, but since it's very underfunded and they don't get paid for this, it's very hard to implement any good ideas. So, but yeah, it's amazing to see how many people, despite of the difficulties, are still able to pursue their dreams and do what they think is right.
And what were the several reactions that you received from the locals when you described the project to them?
I mean, surprisingly so, nobody was surprised about me asking for their fingerprint, which is not something you would expect, right? But I actually didn't print them, I painted them, which is not the same as revealing somebody's identity.
I think we are about to go on a break. We'll be right back. Hi, this is the Margo Show. My name is Pia Cornell, your host for the evening. I am with artist Nikolina Kovalenko here. So right before, if you want to just, I guess, give us a final, final thought from the rainforest, the Amazon trip that you recently had regarding the Saving the Trees project. If you want to just give us a final thought before we move on to a couple last questions.
Yeah, so this is the project I'm currently working on, and I'm almost done with 10 diptychs, and I'm in the process of looking for a space to have a show, so some part of the profits can go back to benefit the reforestation in the communities.
Great. And so what are some of your ongoing projects at the moment, and where do you see these projects going in the future?
Another project I'm working on right now is called 365 Leaves. So I commit to drawing one leaf a day for a year, and 365 leaves make a small tree, and a tree in a year creates enough oxygen for 10 people to breathe. And it's a similar idea. I would like to give back to the community.
This is it right here?
Yes, this is it. This is the first several.
Beautiful.
I would like to give back to a canopy project by Earth Day Network, where every donated dollar gives life to one tree. So this is one of them, and in the future I look forward to teaming up with more environmental NGOs try to make the world a better place together.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this is a dream project of yours?
Yes, well, I'm looking to explore other consequences of climate change, not just deforestation is what I'm focusing on now, but also melting ice cover and coral bleaching. And it would be great to work with scientists more.
But I imagine being in the cold wouldn't be as pleasant as being in the warm rainforest, right?
Well, sometimes, you know what, creativity is boosted by extreme conditions.
I hear that. So, any last thoughts?
Yeah, actually there is one more project I have going on, which is also started in Brazil. It's based on these ruins I found in the middle of a jungle.
Right.
It used to be a hospital, then a prison, then a school, and now it's being swallowed by the jungle. And I just love how nature reclaims what was taken from it.
Yeah.
And this series of drawing is called Nature Cathedral. It shows all this intertwined branches, how they take the whole wall over, just leaving the doorways and creating a ceiling. Just how long would it take for all man-made structure to disappear without trace?
Okay, and I think we are, that's it for the evening. Thank you so much again. This is the Margo Show. My name is Pia Cornell, your host for the evening, and this is Nikolina Kovalenko.
Thank you, Pia.
Thank you.